My name is Kevin Rutherford. I'm here to talk about life through my life. Welcome to the Accelerate Through Life podcast. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I have an extremely special guest, somebody that I've looked up to for a long time now. He is the Vice President of Events for Texas Motor Speedway and the Director of Events for Speedway Motors Inc. Welcome to the show, Kenton Nelson.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's absolutely my pleasure to have you on the show today. For those that don't know what all that entails, what is it like being the Vice President of Events for Texas Motor Speedway, and what does that job description entail?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I've been at it for a while now. As you know, this will be my 28th season. It's not only producing, motorsports events that we have going on, which, that's kind of our bread and butter. But it's producing all of the other ancillary events that we have going on from weekend to weekend. I mean, yesterday alone, we had over 150 people out here doing race car rides, for example. Mm-hmm. We had a car show last weekend as well, with probably 3,000 or 4,000 people in attendance. So filling up the yearly calendar with events, non-motorsports, non-NASCAR, non-IndyCar over the years, is a lot of what we help do. But then producing the big events, the ones that we're known for, right? The most known for, the NASCAR races. It's a massive undertaking. We've got a staff of probably about 7 or 8 people in the events department that manages from the time campers show up to the time they all go home. And most of the time, and this weekend coming up here in just a little bit, they'll be on property with us for almost 10 days. Wow. So we're opening the campgrounds, I want to say the weekend before, April 5th. And campers are able to come out and be a part of all the different things that we've got going on. But we produce everything. I mean, it's the fan zone outside. It's all the activities that happen in and around the programming of the world's largest television. Every night there's a movie. It's something like Smokey and the Bandits or Talladega Nights or whatever, but we're entertaining the campers that are in the infield. It's things like the concerts that we have going on. We've got concerts in the campgrounds after events, and we've got driver Q&As throughout the course of the weekend. All kinds of special stuff that is a part of programming. It's working with the sanctioning bodies to make sure that the timing of everything. I mean, it's I've always said it, and I started, back in '97 with the phrase of "it's the circus comes to town," and that's the NASCAR industry, right?
That's
and
right.
for our weekend coming up, we've got all 3 series. You got the Truck Series racing, the Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series, and the orchestrating of just all the people that come with that. And this, it's not just the teams that come in; it's the PR reps, and it's the sponsors, and it's all those different kinds of things. It's just making sure that everybody understands once they get here on property, kind of where their domain is. And then once everybody kind of settles in for the weekend, everything goes smooth after that. Yeah. But it's those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays of race week are hair on fire, everybody trying to figure it all out. And once they do, then everything goes pretty smooth.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was a thorough answer, and I appreciate that. I want to stop really quick and just paint the picture for the listener. Some of you might be watching on YouTube, but for the people that are not, you may actually hear in the background the IndyCar test going on right now. Yeah. As we're sitting here in your office. So pretty cool spot.
Absolutely.
And where I'm going with that is I want to talk about how you got to the position that you're in today, right? Where you started when you got into the motorsports industry, and then how you've ended up where you're at.
So there's a photo, and I don't know if they'll be able to see it back over there. There's a black and white photo. It's kind of set my career path, and it's a photo of Nelson Sporting Goods. Nelson Sporting Goods was owned by my grandfather in Guthrie, Oklahoma, and I was raised a retail guy. I mean, from the time I was 12 or 13, I was behind the cash register selling people, football equipment, baseball equipment, basketball equipment, and things like that. Ended up going to school up in Oklahoma, and my first job out of college was in San Antonio, and I went to work for the San Antonio Spurs. Was fortunate enough to be able to move to New York and work for the NBA for a couple of years, and missed home, and was able to come back and and go to work for the Mavericks. While I was at the Mavericks, the Speedway started to get built, and I knew absolutely nothing about motorsports, zero. I mean, I knew who Dale Earnhardt was. I knew Terry Labonte, a couple of names, but I channel surfed over it as fast as anybody, kind of a deal. And I got a phone call, and I'm like, are you interested in this? And all the time, Spurs, NBA, Michael Jordan days, all that kind of stuff, I'm responsible for merchandise, licensing, and all those different types of things. And they took me to Daytona, and they're like, are you interested in this? And I'm like, yeah. Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt, those kind of guys. I'm watching people come through the gates at Daytona 500, and it's kind of like going to maybe a Kansas City Chiefs football game nowadays. People are decked out head to toe.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't just have a hat on. They got a hat, a shirt, a jacket, a cooler, a koozie. And I'm in the merchandise business. I'm like, I can do this job, right? Yeah. So I do that, and things go really well. And I'm traveling a little bit for our company. We're obviously we weren't the same size as we are today, right? But we did acquire Sonoma Raceway while I was in the merchandise side. We did acquire Las Vegas Motor Speedway while I was in that role. And the company was asking me to go to those racetracks. And I really felt like I had small kids at the time. We can get into that later. But I wanted to get off the road. And I was like, I need to change. And the GM at the time, the president at the time, Eddie Gossage, asked me if I would come over to the corporate side of things and run the events department, and piqued my interest. I really hadn't thought about that, but 27 years later, here I am, and I'm back to traveling a little bit. My kids are grown and out of the house and that kind of thing. And that's where the director of events comes into play with Speedway Motorsports, as I'm helping out my brothers, if you will, at all the racetracks. I've been to Atlanta this year. I've been to Las Vegas. I just spent 10 days at COTA. We'll have a race here in a couple of weeks, and then I'm back on the road. I'm to Dover before I head to North Wilkesboro for a month to produce the All-Star race again. So that's kind of how it all started and where we're at today.
Yeah, so if you didn't know, Kenton Nelson is the real deal. For those of you listening, you had no idea how important his role is behind the scenes of all of these events going on. And we're going to jump into NASCAR week and all the big events you guys have coming up. But before we do, really quick, I want to just get your take. You entered the sport in 97. It's 2024.
Yeah.
What are some of the improvements that you've seen in the sport? And what are some things you think, man, if we could go back, we'd probably do that different?
Boy, that's a great question. I reminisce. I'm one of the old guys, obviously in the sport now. And I reminisce a lot with staff members that have been here for 5 years and 10 years. And someone being here for 10 years has been here for a long time. Mm-hmm. But they didn't see the way it was in 97 and 98 and so on and so forth, right? You asked me earlier, didn't there used to be grandstands on the backstretch? And there were 35,000 seats back there. I don't know. I think we could probably talk for days, Kevin, about what I would do different if I would have been able to be the person to do that kind of thing. There's a lot of theories out there, right? One of which is, that day in Daytona when Dale Earnhardt passed away.
Absolutely.
Did that change the sport, right? Mm-hmm. So many of the drivers that drove our sport have retired. Mm-hmm. Some are still involved with the sport. It's great to see Jeff Gordon, as a co-owner and as a management type person,
right,
with Hendrick Motorsports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tony's got his deal going on. He's back driving a drag car, but he's involved with the sport. Keselowski has kind of fit his way in there, and that's great. But it's amazing how many people I talk to that are my age, or even when I started in 97, you think about that core fan, say they were 40 years old, maybe they were 50. They're 75, 78 now, right?
Yeah.
And that's changed our not just our outlook, I think. It's how do you get new, younger generation type people involved in this sport? And one of the things that just happened here, and I know I'm kind of all over the place, but it happened last year. And I would have been one that would have just absolutely, died over if you would have told me that we were going to make this race a 400-mile race versus a 500-mile race. It was a 500-mile race for 26 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no way I'm going to give up 100 miles. That's taking away too much of the show from the fans.
Right.
But the fans, to be quite honest with you, the attention span of us today, right? I mean, I'm going to have a hard time not looking at my phone during this interview.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
You got yours there,
Yep.
Kind of a thing. There wasn't one thing that was missed over those 100 miles going away last year. And the drivers would tell you, and the teams and the crews would tell you that the race was better because they don't have, I'll never forget, I don't want to get in trouble, but I'll never forget the time I was watching a race, and I don't remember what race it was, but it was a Fox broadcast, and Darrell Waltrip was on the telecast. And I think I don't want to say he got in serious trouble over it, but he said, now's a good time, during the race broadcast, now's a good time to go mow your grass. During the race broadcast. Yeah. Because we're going to ride around for a couple 100 miles, right, and then it'll get good.
Right. Come back for the last 100 laps.
Yeah, come back for the last 100 laps. Well, there's not 100 laps to just throw away anymore.
That's right.
These races are shorter. I know we're going to talk about dirt track stuff, and to me, you don't get up out of your seat during a feature race at a dirt track.
That's right.
You can't. There's 30 laps for the feature. 20 laps, 50 laps, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably one of the things that NASCAR has probably done best is to be generational conscious to make sure that we're not. I mean, the 600 is the 600. That's always going to be the race. And I don't think they'll ever give up one lap for the Coca-Cola 600. That's what we call in the industry a pillar event, right? The Daytona 500, exactly.
Yep.
And we all understand those types of things.
Absolutely.
But, I could dive a million different directions on what's happened to the sport, why it is where it is today. I mean, the upside to things that are going on right now, we talked about the TV ratings.
Yeah.
The TV ratings for this year are off to a great, great start.
Mm-hmm.
And the TV package for next year and in future years, again, that's just streaming. I don't know how to stream, right? I'm 57 years old. I don't know how to do that stuff. I do now. I mean, I've been forced to do it, but if you'd asked me 2 years ago, what your cable service is, I mean, I'm still on Dish or DirecTV or whatever, paying way too much, right? Yeah. Versus what you have to pay or what you can pay with YouTube TV or whatever else. So I'm getting there just like everybody else.
Yeah, well, and within my industry, the real estate industry, there's a lot of change, especially right now. And, Gary Keller, one of the, goats of real estate, if you will, the owner of Keller Williams, he often talks about you either change with your industry or you get left behind. Right. That's the reality.
Exactly right.
And I know it's easy for us as our Western culture, if you will, to get stuck in our ways and to really push back change. But I know we can't dive into this too deep, but I want to commend NASCAR for letting the drivers have more of an input, because I think that's where they're starting to get the ratings back.
Yeah.
If you think about it, a lot of the drivers are my age.
Sure.
Right. So they probably got a little bit of an idea of what, their friends and their peers and people that they're around are looking for within the entertainment side of things.
Right.
Right. And so, I listen to the Kevin Harvick podcast and the Kenny Wallace show and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And so I think NASCAR has done a good job of listening to that.
Yeah.
And then taking that into consideration and being more open to trying things.
Right.
Saying, hey, if the ratings go up, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right?
Right.
If the ratings go up, we'll keep going that direction. And if they don't, we tried and we'll go a different direction.
I tell you one of the other things, Kevin, and I'm specifically talking about the three top series and specifically the Cup Series. I'll never forget a time I got the schedule from NASCAR on what practice and qualifying and what all that was going to look like. And it was completely different than the years past. So I called my buddies at NASCAR and said, okay, what's going on here? And they're like, we got to have 3 hours of practice. We got to have an hour of qualifying. We got to have all this stuff. And they told me, Kenton, just trust us on this. If we throw some challenges at the teams, you're going to end up seeing a better race. If you give them 3 hours to practice, they're going to dial that car in that 3 hours, and you're going to see the most boring race you've ever seen before.
All right.
So now, today, when I get the schedule, Kevin, it's 20 minutes of practice and then qualify.
Yeah.
If you don't unload good, then you're going to be off.
Right.
And it's not to say that you can't catch up, because you got 400 miles to do it. And again, back to the 500 versus 400,
right.
Every pit stop matters.
That's right.
Every pit stop is like, I've got to take a swing at this thing, or my guy's going to keep running 25th, kind of a deal. So when we gave them 3 hours, it's amazing how smart the people are in the garage. The guys that are working on these, guys and gals that are working on these race cars, you can unload and be off. And by the time you're halfway through the race, you guys have got it, they got it dialed in, and they're running in the top 10, racing for a win.
Right. They didn't get there by accident.
And they didn't get there by accident. Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, NASCAR was, I think, instrumental in making them, challenging them that way. Right. Because again, back in the day, I mean, you mentioned the Chad Canalses and Robbie Loomis and guys like that. They figured it out during practice, then the race was boring.
Well, Ray Abraham, right? Jeff Gordon's
perfect example.
I said, hey, I was hired. My job is to be in that gray area.
Yeah.
And if I'm not, then I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, no question.
Right? And so I think Chad Canals, he's another great one, right? Yep. That has made Hendrick so successful over the years. We'll kind of put a bow on this, but the Bristol race just a few weeks ago, that tire fall off, amazing.
I loved it.
I know it was a touch overboard. Just a touch.
Yeah, you're right.
You back that down about 15%. Probably the best race we've had in a very long time at Bristol.
Yep, absolutely.
This is coming from a dirt guy that was sad that we weren't having dirt.
Right.
But I understand it. Right. Sure. I don't think that show produced what we were hoping for. And so the tire fall off did. It was an exciting race that kept people on the, tuned in all the way through.
How cool was it watching somebody come in and get fresh tires early on in the race and go from 25th to first? That was...
I think it was Chase Briscoe. He released an in-car film, talked about it was like playing a video game.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, when he'd go in and pit and got out there, it was like he was just... bobbing and weaving out of traffic.
And then when it corded, they had a freaking anchor on that was like, okay, you're done for now.
Yeah.
So who's next?
I thought that was awesome. Just an awesome show.
Again, it goes back to challenging those teams. They're really, really good at what they do.
Yes.
So I'm not saying you got to throw curveballs at them, but they got to be challenged.
Right. Absolutely.
No one wants a curveball. Those things are hard to hit.
Yeah. Yes.
So
yes, they are.
It's but not giving them all the time in the day to prepare for it.
That's right.
Produces a better show for the in crowd, the people that are there at the racetrack and the people that are watching.
Yeah. Well, and, going to give a quick example of, I've always been a NASCAR fan. We'll kind of dive into that in a little bit. I had a real estate coach, and she said, you didn't tell me NASCAR was coming to town. This is a few years ago. And I said, I didn't think you liked NASCAR, right? I love it. We've never talked about it to that extent. And she said, well, I don't, but I love Blake Shelton, and he's going to be there.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm going with that, is that you guys have done, from a young man that grew up loving NASCAR, I love NASCAR more than I love Blake Shelton. I love NASCAR more than I've loved anybody that's ever performed. I've enjoyed them, but I'm a racing guy. That helped a lot click for me. That you guys are onto something, right? This is more about how do we put the whole package together to bring new fans to experience it. Because you know what? I think it's real easy to surf over those channels, and you see the NASCAR race and, they're making another left turn. But when you experience that in person, it provides a whole different perspective. Right. And so I think that's important for a lot of people out there listening, that, if you've never been to a race, especially now with all that Texas Motor Speedway has done, renovating their facilities, and a lot of others have as well. We just talked about two floors below us it was kind of a little party area.
Yep,
right.
absolutely.
I mean, it's everything about it has changed.
Yeah.
But real quick, back to the racers. One last question in regards to being in the sport back in 97 versus today. I just would love to know, you have the privilege of knowing the drivers fairly well. What is the competitiveness like in a NASCAR driver in 2024 versus maybe a NASCAR driver in 1997? Is there more? Is there less? What's your take on that?
Well, I guess what I would say is, it's funny. I think Tony said this, Tony Stewart, that is, said this maybe in the PR or in the media center at Daytona years and years and years ago that he would wreck his mom, to win a race, right?
Yeah.
And that is just one of the greatest lines of all time, and I think he meant it, right? And that's, to me, that's what racing meant back then.
That's right.
To a driver. Today I'm not sure that. I mean, there's a handful of them out there, right? I mean, what Ross Chastain did a couple of years ago, to make it into the playoffs or the finale in Phoenix.
Do whatever it takes mentality.
Do whatever it takes mentality. So there's a couple of them out there. The big topic of conversation, from this past weekend at COTA was, did Ty Gibbs hold up Christopher Bell, with, what was it, 4 or 5 to go?
Right.
Could he have caught William Byron?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember, I think I was listening to Sirius the following morning, and somebody said, if that's the kind of racing that you want to watch, you need to find F1 on your television set. Because there'll be team orders.
Right. Move over.
Right. Move over.
Yeah.
Ty Gibbs was battling as much as I wanted to see my buddy from Oklahoma get to the front again. Was like, William Byron could cut a tire on the next lap or run off the course.
That's right.
And he's going to win this thing, kind of a deal. So I don't know. To me, old school is just old school, right? I just think they were harder, tougher, meaner, kind of a thing. There was a lot of, I mean, it's happened here. I mean, you've seen Jeff Gordon push Jeff Burton. You've seen Keselowski and Harvick and a lot of others go at it here,
right?
Kind of a thing, and go at it a lot of different places. And not to say that they don't get fired up still today.
Absolutely.
I just think it was different back then, right? And in a good way. Not that it's bad now. I want to see a driver get out of their car and be upset if they were done wrong, kind of a thing. And I get what Kyle Busch did to Christopher Bell.
Yeah.
I completely understand where he was coming from and how he felt that way. But did you hear what Kyle Petty said afterwards?
I didn't.
There was a hole, and Christopher Bell took it, right? And Kyle Busch kind of chopped down on him.
Yeah.
So who was right, who was wrong? Who knows?
To me, you have to chalk that as a racing incident.
At least, exactly. At least the two of them had a conversation about it and made for good TV, and it's made for a ton of social media, because people are blasting Christopher for looking like he's, 10, 11, 12 years old, scared to death. Heck, he probably was scared to death.
Absolutely.
Right? I've heard Larson and Christopher say, these guys aren't big guys. And Kyle Larson said, if somebody's going to hit me, I'm going to die. I'm not going to fight back. I'm 5'5" and 120 pounds.
Yeah.
He's just not going to do it.
That's right.
And Tony Stewart and Clint Boyer and people like that, they were looking for people to get in a fist fight with.
That's right.
After the event.
I think Tony still might be.
And you've also got a lot of sponsor type stuff that is just today versus back then. It takes a lot of money, as you know, Kevin, to put these cars on the racetrack. And you see, one of the things that's different today than what it used to be is, the Jeff Gordon paint scheme was the 24 rainbow, right? And it changed a little bit over the years, but no matter where they were, Texas, Vegas, Chicago, it was going to be that car. When William Byron shows up, you don't know if it's going to be the Raptor car or the Kelley Blue Book car or the whatever.
That's right.
Kind of a car.
That's right.
And all those people are making them get up and down the road, and they don't need, somebody who's fighting or somebody who's, not representing that brand properly. They wear their teams on their chest on those fire suits.
That's right.
And they got to be careful about how they act, and what they say and all those kind of things. That's different than what it used to be. I think the sponsors, for the most part, back in the late 90s, stood behind their drivers. And
think about who the sponsors were, right?
No, there's no question.
When I think about those and what those companies likely stood for versus today, it's a night and day difference.
Exactly.
Right.
There was a reason why Earnhardt drove a black car.
That's right. That's right. You brought up Kyle Busch, you brought up Dale Earnhardt. Maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't. Is Kyle Busch the closest thing we have to today to Dale Earnhardt back in the day? My answer is yes.
Yeah, Kyle's unbelievably talented. He's not going to get to 7 championships, I don't think. That's not in the cards for him. But the fact that he's got so many wins in all three series, he's owned his own teams. Earnhardt owned his own teams for a little while until he passed and that kind of a thing. So, yeah, I mean, you could definitely put those two in the same category for sure. And I do think the Intimidator, when you look at it from that standpoint, again, Kyle's got a lot of skins on the wall. And I'm not saying anybody moves over for him, but they know when they're racing around Kyle Busch versus Ryan Preece. No offense to Ryan.
Right.
But they know that's Kyle Busch out there, not Michael McDowell.
Which is crazy to think that Kyle Busch is the veteran of the sport now.
Right.
I mean, to me, that went
nuts. By. Yeah. I mean,
quick.
his son, who's won here at Texas Motor Speedway over at Micromania the first year we ran that race, having Kyle and his son race with us on our NASCAR weekends over at Little Texas on the dirt is one of the coolest things that, I mean, I'm really, really proud that we were able to pull that thing together, and you've got a generational thing happening. And I know you know the story about Kyle. I mean, when Kyle's ready to go, he's going to run full-time in the Truck Series. It's his plan. He doesn't have a Truck Series championship. He wants that, and Braxton's going right into that truck the year after kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I think we'll have a Busch around for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and a Harvick and
Keelan's coming as well.
Right.
And we've also got an Owen Larson who races with over at Little Texas.
Cash Boyer.
We need to get him out here. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah,
I think Harvick may have a second one.
I think the daughter may be a little bit more of a...
His Instagram's just absolutely cracked me up. Yep. She is a tough cookie.
Yeah, I love it. Well, okay, we just talked about the Micromania. You guys have a really big couple of weeks coming up.
Yeah.
So let's dive into that, because maybe let's pretend the people listening don't know anything about what's coming up here at Texas Motor Speedway over just starting next week, about 10 days from now. So go ahead and tell us what all we got to look forward to.
Yeah, so we've got obviously a big weekend of NASCAR racing. But before we get to that, I mentioned the campgrounds open on April 5th. And that Friday night, April 5th and 6th, we'll race at the big dirt track with a POWERi series. We're looking forward to that. And then for the last 2 or 3 years now, this will be the third year, we converted the little 5th mile to dirt. And Christopher Bell, myself, and several others came up with the idea of putting dirt on that track and bringing the micro sprint cars in. And we've had huge car counts. We've had Kyle Larson win the first year. We've had Kyle Busch over there race all those years. Christopher Bell. There's been a handful of other. Sheldon Creed's raced with us. Daniel Hemrick's raced over there. And it's really cool to see, those guys in the pits. Mm-hmm. Last year, Wyatt Miller, Kelly Earnhardt's son, was over at Little Texas, and lo and behold, guess who ends up in the pits? Dale Earnhardt Jr. is over there watching his nephew race. So how cool is that?
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. So we race over at Little Texas with the micro cars on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then we get to the NASCAR side of things. We race the trucks on Friday night. We've got the Xfinity race on Saturday, and then we go back to the big dirt track for the High Limit Series, which is owned by Kyle Larson and Brad Sweet and that bunch. And we've got some former NASCAR guys that are involved with that. Casey Kane will be over there racing. Rico Abreu will be over there racing. So we're really looking forward to a big crowd at the dirt track on Saturday night. And then Sunday, we finally get to the finale, right? And we've got, the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 400, and can't be more excited about that. So, yeah, just a ton of racing. I guess it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nights of dirt track racing and 3 NASCAR races.
Man, that is just music to my ears.
Yeah, exactly. So don't tell me we don't race out at Texas Motor Speedway. We got a lot going on.
I love it. Well, I plan on racing the Texas Motor Speedway dirt track April 5th and 6th.
Right.
Some of the speculation is that track hasn't been used in a few years.
Yeah, it hasn't. Yeah.
So people are worried about what kind of condition is the track itself going to be in, right? Is there going to be rocks in it? Is there going to be, with the grass or anything of that nature? What's your response to all those people that have doubts about the track next week?
It's funny that you say that, because I was talking to somebody in the industry, Martin Edwards, actually, a couple, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And, you call Martin, you call his dad and ask him what they're doing. And most of the time they're on a piece of equipment.
That's right.
Working on the dirt track.
Yep.
And he was at RPM Speedway, and I was like, I'm putting a little water down on the track. I think it might have been a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And I'm like, Martin, if you came over here and watered our track, you'd just be growing more grass, because it has been dormant. But listen, I've got the most confidence that we've ever had in the team that we've got coming in from POWERi, Kenny Brown and his entire team, who's been prepping the little track for us for the last couple of years. And they've done a remarkable job. Their entire team landed in Fort Worth yesterday. All the equipment is there. The water trucks are there. The motor grader's there. The sheep's foot is there. Everything is over there. And they started working on that track, and we'll be working on it up until April 5th, night and day, getting that thing ready to go. So I have all the confidence in the world. And I'm really happy that we were able to schedule this 5th and 6th event prior to the high limit race. Right. Which is the following Saturday. So, yeah, we'll get it right. There's no question in my mind we'll get it right.
Well, and just to put things in perspective for when this podcast is released, that gives them about 10 days to get the track ready. Is that correct?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Awesome. Yep. And then following up to that, they're going to be back. The POWERi series is going to be back, and I think this is important to note while we're on the subject. The high limits come into town October 4th and 5th, and make sure I'm looking at that
that's
correct.
The POWERi series will be on the 4th and 5th, and then the following weekend will be the finale for the high limit series for their first ever season. They'll be running the finale, and I want to say that Saturday night is a $50,000 to win.
Wow.
410 sprint car race.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
We should have big crowd, big car count, all that good stuff. And then something really fun about that in weekend is they'll crown their champion that night, obviously on Saturday night. And the banquet, which is not a NASCAR, which is a racing thing, right? Is you award your champions, you award your points leaders and things like that. That's actually going to happen here at Texas Motor Speedway as well on the 9th floor in the ballroom of the Speedway Club. So we were able to put all that together with Kyle Larson and his team.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And, something we brought up is hopefully they'll start selling tickets to it.
Yeah.
I think that'd be awesome for people that...
I will bring that up to them when I see them here in a couple of weeks and let them know that, obviously they haven't been able to do a whole lot of site visits at this point, but I'm sure during NASCAR weekend, we'll be able to take them up there to that room and say, NASCAR started doing that years ago. Right. When we were at the Waldorf Astoria for the awards banquet, there wasn't enough room.
Yes.
But when we moved to Vegas and started doing it out there, they basically took, I don't know if it was half or it was 3/4 or whatever, but there was a percentage of the seats available inside the NASCAR Sprint, Nextel, Monster, or whatever series banquet to where fans could actually purchase tickets and come enjoy the banquet. And it was always, the drivers always recognized it because when they got up on stage, they could hear the fans back there cheering them on and things like that. So I'll mention it to Kyle and team and see if that's not something that we can make happen for the fans.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. So if I'm a fan listening to this and I, or maybe, I don't know anything about dirt track racing, but I'm going to be here for the Texas Motor Speedway race weekend. What would I look forward to the most about the high limit series coming to Texas Motor Speedway dirt track?
Well, the coolest thing to me in working with them has been when I asked, obviously we've been talking about a lot of different things with them. We're gonna start off the night with some pre-race activities. So they will have upwards of what I've been told 12 to 15 merchandise rigs that are traveling with them around the country. So Brad Sweet will have his own rig, and Casey Kane will have his own rig, and so on and so forth. Rico and Brad and the rest of them. They're all going to come around to the front side where those rigs are at and get in their trailers and sign autographs. We've actually got a stage that we're going to have what we call Trackside Live Dirt Edition. And those drivers that I keep naming are going to get up on the stage and we'll do Q&As with them, and we'll have a live audience and that kind of a thing. Then we'll go race. Then we'll go race, and after the race, we're going to do a Tim Duggar concert, for the fans that are in attendance for the dirt track race. So there's you don't see all that going on at a dirt track. So souvenirs, merchandise, food and beverage, hospitality, all that good stuff will be going on for the High Limits race on Saturday night.
And again, that's April 13th,
Correct.
2024. So make sure to come out there and check that out. You guys have the Xfinity race that day as well. So I believe that's at 12:30.
Correct. Green flags at 12:30. We've got cup practice and qualifying before that.
Yep. You could spend all day out here and watch race cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going from practice to qualifying to the Xfinity race, and then go get something to eat and go to the High Limit Series.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
What an awesome day. I think I just made my entire agenda for April at 13th. Awesome. Man, just kind of transitioning from that, what an awesome conversation this has been, and thinking about where our sport is headed. You have a passion and a love for dirt track racing. It's actually where I met you and your son, Kyle Nelson, out at Devil's Bowl Speedway several years ago. What path do you think we're on right now? We talked about the ratings continuing to go up. And what path do you hope to see? I guess my question is this: as the fan base that we talked about earlier, that was, fans of NASCAR back in the 90s and the early 2000s, as they begin to not be as interested or to, go to their next chapter in life, what do you want to see happen to be able to keep the newer generations involved in racing?
Kevin, that's a great question, and I want to talk about dirt track racing for a second. Yeah. Because I have been involved with it. I owned a car. My son drove in it. We raced regionally, I would call it, right, for a couple of 2 or 3 years. I put him in a couple of different types of cars, and he did well. Won some races. We had a lot of fun. And then, so I've stayed engaged with it, right? And I know a lot of promoters. I know a lot of track owners and things like that. I hate seeing tracks go under, right? There's been a lot of that over the last 5-10 years. I'm not sure if the drivers and the fans understand social media and the impact that they play. And it happens to all of us. It happens from the event this past weekend at COTA. It happens each and every weekend here at Texas Motor Speedway. But in dirt track racing, my gosh, Kevin, the drama, right, that goes on, it drove us out of the sport. Yeah. It's just like, I can remember with Kyle started racing Bandoleros and Legends cars and stuff out here at Texas Motor Speedway, and I was in the position that I am today, right? But I didn't want to be Kenton Nelson, Texas Motor Speedway. I wanted to be Kenton Nelson, dad, right, and enjoy myself. But yet, my son's not even on the track, and there's racing going on in different classes, as you know, right? And I'm not even paying attention to it. I may be over there checking out air pressure or whatever. Absolutely. And I've got a parent coming to me complaining about something that happened on the racetrack that I didn't see. Take that 10 times more, and you start hearing all these things that go on, and track promoters are trying to defend themselves. They're squeaking out a dime if they're lucky, right, to do this. And I just think it's so much of what's happening in dirt track racing is self-inflicted by the racers themselves. Yeah. I've never heard that about you, or there's a lot of people. You go race, you load your stuff up, and you go home, and you do it again next week. Right. If things didn't go your way, right? There's no waiting for the race director, right? Of all the tracks that we went to, I never knew who the race director was. Right. Nor did I want to know. If a call didn't go our way, we just didn't go our way, and we came back the next week. I didn't think anybody was out for us. Right. Kind of a thing. Yeah. I think people just in dirt track racing, man, I don't know how to say this without just being crucified, but we got to be better. Yeah. We got to be better people, better individuals. If you're in it to get the $300 check, for winning a limited modified race, and that's the most important thing to you, you got to find a different hobby, dude. You've missed it. You missed your whatever it is that you're out there I don't know. We used to say it. We used to laugh about it all the time, especially when we built the big dirt track. You know, everybody used to always joke, Jack Roush is in the grandstands. No, he's not.
Right.
He's not looking for the kid that's 12 years old, you know, kind of a thing. You know, Legends cars, Bandoleros, there's a lot of success in those. You know, the kids have come up through those series.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it does happen, but that's not why we should be racing in the dirt series, in any type of dirt series, to think that you're going to be the next Jeff Gordon. And, you know, I'm generation myself, because that's the way it was when Kyle was that age.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to be the next Jeff Gordon.
Right.
And they saw that path kind of a thing. But I really believe.
I mean, and now it's Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those things are going to happen, but it's like any other ball and stick sport.
The percentage
is
very low.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's not going to happen.
Well, and
I can remember back in the Legends and Bandoleros days, hearing about parents that mortgaged their homes.
Yeah.
They took out a second mortgage to be able to put their son or their daughter, you know, to buy them a new motor. Like, whoa, time out.
So NASCAR just released a series on Netflix, right?
They did.
Denny Hamlin's mom says they did that.
Yeah, exactly. So it did work out.
Right? But there's that percentage.
But I can tell you, I can give you 10 names that, you know,
they did it didn't work out.
That it didn't, you know, because, you know, the talent just wasn't there.
Yeah,
well, you know, for that individual kind of a thing. So I don't know. Back to your original question is, where is the sport going? I think so much of what social media does plays into where we're going, and I don't think that's right. It bothers me to read comments from people that just want to be haters. Just want to be, what's the word, trolls? Yeah. Right? Social media trolls.
Yeah. And the more successful you are, the more you're going to have.
Yeah. And exactly. And it just, people that are working for a living trying to make these places that they go to enjoy themselves and to have an outlet for what their passion is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a damper.
Yeah.
I mean, it is demoralizing to hear and read those comments because that's not what we're all about. We're trying to give every fan the best experience they possibly can.
Right.
And sometimes you've got to make decisions that aren't the same as what they were the year before or the decade before, right? You know, and people want to live in that world that it used to be this way or it used to be that way. I get it, you know, but...
You know, I've had the privilege of racing for 19 years now. I've done everything from racing go-karts on dirt to the ARCA Menard series, right, competing in it. And I think we take it for granted, our weekly dirt racers, how much fun and how much of a privilege and opportunity it is to go do what we get to do.
Yeah.
Right? I had a guy call me today actually talking about selling his car because there's no tracks within 5 hours of him. Man.
Yeah, it's tough.
When I think, like, that just hit me.
Yeah.
Right? And I bring up the ARCA deal because I can tell you that getting to experience that, right? Running 3 races in the ARCA Menard series, which was, you know, what I thought was the pinnacle of my career. And I guess, depending on which way you look at it, wasn't the most fun. Right. Having a family reunion like I do every weekend now, where my son has both sets of his grandparents and maybe even great-grandparents out there at the racetrack to hang out with, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And if we don't be better, as you said, then we're going to run out of that opportunity, right? We're not going to have that place to do it anymore. So I hope people will listen to that part, especially as we continue to try to find ways to help grow the sport, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we all want.
Yeah,
this is something we're passionate about. It's what we love. It's what we love to do. So trip down memory lane really quick.
Okay.
I guess first and foremost, how did Kyle start racing? How did you guys get involved into racing Bandoleros?
Yeah. So Kyle was 3 when I started at the Speedway, and Cody was 8 months old, 9 months old, something like that. They didn't know any better, right? They grew up in the sport. Kyle started coming. I don't know that Kyle missed a race. I think my dad brought him to the first race when he was 3 years old, and he probably had a string going there for 10, 15 years that was better than anybody. I don't care what season ticket holder says I was at every event. Kyle was at every event.
Yeah.
Kyle worked out here once he got old enough to work out here. And when I say old enough, I need to clarify that. 10, 11, 12. He's mowing grass, and he's coming to me saying, "Dad, I need a key for this. Dad, I need a key for that." And I can remember one day he didn't come to my office. I mean, we rode out here together. He gets on a golf cart and starts doing whatever it is he's doing, whether he was working for me or working for the operations department or whatever, or getting ready for a Legends race, back in the day, during the summer. And he didn't come to me to get my keys. And one of his older friends, the day before, had drove him to either Lowe's or Home Depot, and he made his own set and didn't tell me. So he was like, "I'm tired of bothering my dad. I'm just going to go get my own set of keys," kind of a thing. So he was brought up around it, and it just, the bandoleros were just on his radar when he got to that point. It's like, I want one of those, kind of a deal. And we got one, and I probably, I did it differently than most people, right? I didn't let him just jump in there and go race. We came out here, and I paid for the fire rescue. I mean, we did have our privileges, right? I didn't have to pay to rent the track because I worked here, but I didn't rent it I didn't use it when it was being used.
Right.
We'd come out on a Tuesday night, and I'd pay for the fire guys to come out, and we'd practice for a couple, 2 or 3 hours. And I made him do that from the time he was, I think you can start racing a bando at 8. I don't think he actually raced the bando until he was 10. He goes out and wins his first race, and I'm like, I'm done now. I mean, he thinks he's Jeff Gordon, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we back up, and, I'm like telling the race director who worked for me, start him in the back. Don't give him the pole position. He'll just run away from it. So I made it hard on him.
Right.
And he loved it. I mean, it's just baseball, basketball, football, all the things that I did as a kid, didn't know anything about racing, like I said before. It was like he made the decision, like, I don't want to play all those things. It was like, how am I going to do both? And I was like, Kyle, you can't do both.
Yeah.
It's hard to do both. I mean, you could.
Right.
But he made the decision to go racing. And back then, this was some of the best times of my life, and his, to be honest with you. I think he would tell you this is, so the Legends program was going strong here at Texas Motor Speedway. It's still going strong in Atlanta. It's still going strong in Charlotte. And during the summer, we would get in the truck and get in the trailer, and we would race. I may get this wrong, but I think we practiced in Charlotte on Monday nights for the summer shootout, and we raced on Tuesday nights. We got done on Tuesday nights. We went to Atlanta. We practiced on Wednesday. We raced their Thursday Thunder on Thursday nights. We sometimes would get a race in Georgia somewhere, Watermelon Speedway, someplace like that, on a Friday night, and then get back to TMS to race Saturday night. And then we turned around and went back to Charlotte. And I took vacation during that time period. And yeah, I mean, he got bit by it, right? And then it got to a point to where it's like, okay, we've done bandos, we've done Legends. What's next, right?
Yeah.
And I met Tom Lawrence at Smiley's Racing Products. And it's like, what's this all about? Dirt. I actually hired somebody that had a dirt background that was working for us. We kind of got introduced to it. We rented a car the first time. I think he got a lap down, and then he ended up getting his lap back, and he was like, okay, let's go do this. We bought a car, got involved with it, and that was kind of from, I don't know, maybe 14, 15 when he got in a limited modified. And I guess I'm lucky, and from a financial standpoint, that college, I mean, he went off to college, went up to A&M, and he wasn't in the car every weekend, Kevin. Right. And he was the one that came to me and said, Dad, I'm not any good if I'm not in the car every week. It takes me too much time to figure it out again, right, kind of a thing. And I don't want to waste your money, and I don't want to go out and get sponsors and not represent them well and all that kind of thing. But yeah, there's always this hope in me that he'll get back into it once he gets established. And I think he would like to. Yeah. And I say that jokingly because there's still a racing bag. There's still fire suits and Hans device and helmets and stuff like that. Those things haven't been donated or thrown away yet.
You certainly know the right people to make that happen.
I mean, we could make it happen if it got to that point. Yeah. So, I mean, he's busy with his job now and all like that. And he's about to be a dad for the first time. So we're looking forward to that. But Yeah, it was a great run, and Cody along the way was there to support his brother and got involved in announcing the races and doing all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a family affair.
Yeah, well, let's kind of hit on that. You've incredible marriage, right? You're an incredible husband. You've got 2 awesome kids, sons, that have gone on to do incredible things. What all do you credit that to? To the awesome young men that they've turned out to be within growing up in this community, right?
Yeah.
Whether that be in the racing bandoleros, maybe the lessons they learned through that, or racing dirt track, or just being able to come up here and work alongside you at Texas Motor Speedway.
Yeah. Kevin, I wish I had the answer, but I would share it with everybody if I did. I mean, I don't know if my wife would say that I'm an incredible husband or those kind of things, but we've had luck. We've had a lot of luck in raising 2 very good kids. I think we've set, the example for them, right? I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Is like, if something happened in life, we weren't overreacting to it. We weren't, drama. There wasn't any of that kind of stuff in our life. I can remember from a very early age, back in the bandolero days, if Kyle hit somebody or turned somebody, I made him go apologize.
Yeah.
He kicked and screamed and did not want to go do it, but it made him a better person for manning up to his mistake kind of a thing.
Right.
It was always, we're going to do the right thing, right? And in both of their lives. And I honestly today, with both of them being professionals in the sport today, there was a situation that just happened this past weekend in Austin, and I won't get into the details, but I was asked to come handle a situation, and I'm in my truck driving around to the situation, and I called my son for advice. I called my son to say, okay, here's what I'm getting ready to get into. How would you handle it? And I mean, just so much quicker than I could think of. He's given me all these little tidbits of like, do this, do that, say this, say that. I'm like, I got sharp kids. We got lucky. We got really, really lucky. And I'm fortunate. My wife's fortunate. But I just think they've been around it all their lives, and they know just be kind, be professional. I remember one time he was probably in his teens. I don't remember if it was Kyle or Cody, but I got upset. I was, how the phone comes through your car nowadays, and they can, unfortunately they get to hear the conversations if they're riding around with me. And I hung up and said, why'd you get so mad? Why did you have to handle it that way? So we're still learning from each other, on how to be better people and how to handle things differently.
Well, I think there's two golden nuggets that really stand out to me in this interview that I think people will hopefully take away. One of them is the power of social media for racetracks. That even if you're just a fan, right, whether you're a fan or you're an actual race car driver, the power that you have within that social media to either help propel the sport or bring it back, right? The truth is, in life, we're either moving forward or moving backwards. There's no such thing as being stagnant. And then the other thing, I think you just hit the nail on the head, is that 2 things. One is it's 10% of what happens to us, and it's 90% of how we react. Right? That's just the way life works. And that, maybe there's somebody younger than you out there that can help you along the way. Iron sharpens iron. And I know whenever I was younger, you think your parents are so old. And then now that I'm an older man, I'm like, man, there's not that much age difference anymore, right? As I once thought, as fast as this has went by. Well, the way I want to wrap this up is just talking about all the things, all the experiences that you've had within this career. So I'd love to talk about the highs, right? What's your favorite part about this job, and what's maybe your not so favorite part about this job? And does it ever get old, right? You guys have events out here at Texas Motor Speedway. Like when I look at your calendar, it's like, when's your next day off in 2024? Or 2025? I can only say that because that calendar hasn't came out yet, right? So what are some of your favorite parts, some of the down lows, and how do you do it all?
I don't think it ever gets old. I mean, obviously, I tease my best friend quite a bit. My best friend from 3rd grade, 4th grade. So, I mean, we were 10 years old. We're both in our middle 50s, I'd call it. And he sells life insurance, and going to work every day selling life insurance is very rewarding. He's been very successful at it. Financially has done incredible. But when we're together, and I feel guilty about this, Kevin. It's all about what's going on at the Speedway. He wants to talk about all the fun stuff, right? And I feel fortunate, very, very fortunate to have the career that I've had, because people want to know about fun stuff. They don't want to know about this guy who builds houses that I know, or this guy that works at a bank, you know, kind of things. Those are all really important. And I could have been one of those guys. I could have been a guy in retail, right? But I was a guy in retail that got to hang out with Michael Jordan,
right,
you know, during NBA championships, and got to, you know, go to the Waldorf Astoria, you know, back in the day with Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon winning championships and all like that. So it never gets old. The days are different every day, prepping for events. You're always excited about the next year. We've got some exciting things coming to us in 2025 with our race schedule, which I think will be out sometime in late April to early May. You guys will know what it is when it comes out. The downside, if there is one, is it's a lot of hard work, you know, and you're away from your family. You know, you're working long hours. I mean, I was very fortunate, you know, as my kids were growing up, and like I said before, I mean, they gave up, well, Kyle gave up ball and stick stuff. Cody played ball and stick stuff all through high school. I never missed any of those things unless I was just out of town. If I needed to leave here at 3:00 to get to Mansfield for a 4:00 JV game, I was in the grandstands. I was there able to support those kind of things. We had a race weekend, senior night of his senior football game. I missed the truck race. I went to senior night, you know, that kind of a thing. So the time spent away from family, those are the challenging things. But as you get to my age and you've got a support staff, you know, you're able to, people will cover for you.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm not going to let anybody that's on my team that might be, you know, someone who's got a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. I've got somebody on my staff right now that their son's going to Cooperstown this summer to play in a baseball tournament. And it's during an event. And I'm like, you're not needed at the event. You're going to go to Cooperstown. Don't worry about it. We'll cover for you. You're going to cover for me next time or somebody else next time.
Right.
So it's just making sure that, you know, it's God, family, and work. And sometimes they get flipped around. Sometimes it has to be work before God, before family. But those three things are probably, I mean, that's just where you need to prioritize.
Yeah,
right?
it's a balancing act.
It's a balancing act, exactly. You know, so I'm gone a lot of Sundays. There's chapel in the infield.
Yeah.
You know, there's chapel online, right? But I can watch my service, you know, online on Saturday nights or even Sundays.
Yeah.
You know, those kind of things. So it's just prioritizing, you know, your work-life balance, right? But
my parents have been coming out here since the inaugural race in '97, right? And my mom is part of the church group that comes out
awesome.
and serves pancakes on the race weekend mornings, and she's been doing that for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, Dr. Marsh started that for us, and Brett Schisler is leading that charge today.
Awesome people.
They are incredible.
Yeah. Well, the way we're going to put a bow on this and land the plane, as my pastor would say, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by this interview, and I can already tell you it's going to be one of our most downloaded episodes. And so I want to kind of tell people how we met, give a little bit of a quick rundown on our how I ended up in this position. And I want to give a quick story on you. I started working out at Texas Motor Speedway through Team Texas High Performance Driving School back in 2013. I was 17 years old at the time, so I was just a snotty-nosed kid. And you were in the position you were in now, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I remember seeing you down at the events, and whether it was the Tony Stewart Smoke Show or whatever it was, and anytime there was something that was wrong, I don't even have an example right now. You pulled me aside one time, and you very calmly asked me to go do something, and said, "Hey, I just boom, 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 whatever it is," and you treated me with the utmost respect as a snotty-nosed 17-year-old kid. And then furthermore, the way our relationship began is, work ethic. I think that's kind of how I've ended up being able to earn the relationship of having you as a friend,
right.
That I've really enjoyed, of calling you 3 or 4 years ago and saying, "Hey, I'm kind of starting out this entrepreneur journey, getting married, doing all these different things, and would just love to go to lunch with you." And you said yes. And so we've been able to go do things like that. And I think what unlocked that door was the work ethic that I had at that young age, right? Being one of the hardest workers in the room, and I say that humbly. But man, I worked my butt off back in those days for Mike Starr at the driving school, and you never know how that's going to come back and play out in your life. Right. But the relationships at the end of the day, it's like I tell people in my business within real estate that the transaction is going to come and go. Right. You're going to sell your house. You're going to buy your house. You're going to sell this commercial property, whatever that is. But the relationship's going to go on forever. Right. And so I look at life as that in general aspect, that, all of the materialistic things come and go in our lives. And the one thing that we're going to be left with eternally, through my faith, is that our relationships,
each other.
That's what's most important. And so, man, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your time. I always hear people say it's so hard to get to know people that have reached a pinnacle of success that you have, and I struggle with that because I've got amazing mentors such as yourself that if you'll just ask, and you've got some type of credibility, they're willing to teach you.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
They're willing to help you. So, man, I want to say thank you for that.
No, you're welcome.
And just to end with this, if there's one takeaway you had for a listener out there that's trying to figure out, hey, maybe they're in a career change, maybe they're just getting ready to get married, or whatever that situation looks like, what's one piece of life advice you got for them?
Wow, be honest. I think that's probably is the best advice I can give you is. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with who you're talking to, who you're dealing with, whether it's your spouse, your employer, whatever. Be an honest individual. Work hard at it, and things will come your way. Yeah. Believe things are going to come your way, and they will.
I'm going to be racing in the High Limit Series in October.
There you go.
Speaking it into existence, right?
I love it.
Awesome. Well, hey, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, Mr. Kenton Nelson, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Kevin.
Look forward to doing it in the future. And, hey, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please give it a share. Thank you, guys. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Accelerate Through Life podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you get your podcast. See you next time.